Everyone says I love you, but just what they say it for I never knew. It's just inviting trouble for the poor sucker who says I love you.
I love good music.
So do I. Let's get out of here.
Sit down.
What's that? Zachary Fisk? You investigated? He stopped it! Oh, no, 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 no. In the morning, in the morning, in the morning, in the morning. And for the land roundup.
There's a screw loose in this hotel somewhere, and I'm going to find it.
Well, if you'll only give me a chance to investigate.
Investigate. You allow this chiseler to move in 22 other people. 22 people I can't even find! Jumping butterballs!
Hello, YouTube and YouTubettes. Welcome to another Marx Brothers movie review. I am Robbo.
And I'm Becko.
And today we're going to review the movie Room Service, which came out on September 21st, 1938.
Broadway producer Gordon Miller has sunk every dime into his latest project but still lacks the money to get the play out of rehearsals, while dodging hotel manager Gribble and his henchman Wagner over his unpaid bills. Gordon, director Harry Benelli, and manager Faker England try to soothe the jangled nerves of their playwright and convince a wealthy backer to invest heavily in this show.
Okay, Becko, give me a cast list for this movie.
Marx plays Gordon Miller. Chico Marx plays Harry Benelli. Harpo Marx plays Faker England. Lucille Ball plays Christine. Ann Miller plays Hilda Manny. Frank Albertson plays Leo Davis. Donald McBride plays Gregory Wagner. Alexander Asrow plays Sasha Smirnoff. And Charles Halton plays Dr. Glass.
Okay, Becko, what did you think of the story of this movie?
The storyline of this movie was okay. It felt like it was kind of everywhere, like it didn't really stick to a very solid plot line, and sometimes it was hard to follow. Most of it took place in one room, but the storyline was just okay. It was a little boring at times and hard to follow at times.
Yeah, I think the idea is okay. I just didn't think it was executed well. I didn't think the writing, the lines were kind of bland or not very creative. And so that, in terms of writing, if we include that in with the story, I didn't think it was very good on that regard. I think it's a good idea, and I think it's the idea for a really good play, but it just wasn't done well. So, do you have a favorite scene that might be more for the storyline?
You know, I couldn't think of one when I was watching it. That was the only thing I left blank because it was just hard to follow. And a lot of the scenes were really long. Like there would be
Mm-hmm.
15, 20 minutes where it's one scene or even longer than that. So, as far as favorite scene, I don't know that one necessarily stands out to me as far as the storyline.
My favorite scene was the fake death, I guess, which will be connected to my favorite comedy scene. But I thought that was the most action-packed and interesting scene of the whole movie, where
Mm-hmm.
most of it was slow. So that was the one part that I enjoyed. So what's your overall score for the story?
I give the storyline a 3.
And I gave it a 6. All right, the quality of the movie. Becco, any thoughts on the quality or the costumes, sets, etc.?
Not so much. Again, nothing really stood out to me. There were parts of it that just seemed kind of blah. as far as the writing and the plot, it reminded me more of like a Three Stooges movie,
Hmm.
but without the Three Stooges.
Yeah.
So it left a lot, you know, it's not like the quality was horrible. It didn't have the same like impact in some of the special effects. Not that not that Marx Brothers movies have any kind of extreme special effects, but um, some of the gags that you're used to seeing just weren't as big as and impactful as some of the things you've seen like Harpo do, like when he gets the frog to jump in his hat,
Hmm.
or just some of those things that they do in the other movies was kind of lacking in this one.
Yeah. There was some special effects in previous movies that were either funny or more realistic. Than this one was kind of like that scene with the turkey was just a bit silly. I felt like they would have done better than that in the previous movie. Did you have any thoughts on the costuming or?
Not really. This movie didn't have. Some of the other movies had an actual costumey type scene. Either it was some sort of costume ball, or some kind of dance performance, or it had either a play or an opera or something in it, which this one didn't have. So all of them just wore kind of regular everyday stuff. There was something that I noticed with Chico. I think he almost wears a hat always in every movie, even when he's indoors. He
Hmm.
has that funny little Alps hat that he wears all the
Hmm.
time. And there were actually scenes in this movie where he wasn't wearing a hat at all.
Hmm.
And it looked kind of strange.
There was
Like it,
actually, you mentioned that though while we were watching it, is that there were several men wearing hats inside.
yeah, there was one scene where they do that. I think for sometimes when you see like mobster type men, they may wear hats inside just simply because they're working and they don't want to be holding their hat. They want their hands to be free,
Hmm.
and they're not, sometimes cops or something might not take off their hats when they're indoors. But with this one, it's almost like he left his hat on. I think it's the main guy, not one of the Marx brothers, but it
Hmm.
was more for a gag and not because it needed to be on, because yeah, it looked kind of strange for him to have his hat on because he wasn't working or anything like that. So
Hmm.
I think they left it on because there was some sort of joke or some sort of physical gag that they were leading up to. I can't remember what it was, but it was kind of unnecessary. It wasn't good enough to make him wear his hat for no reason when he was inside. You're not used to really seeing Groucho and uh I mean sometimes Harpo has that top hat on, but he doesn't always have it. It's mainly when they're
Hmm.
just certain times. But Chico always has a hat and he didn't have one in the scene when everyone else is wearing a hat. So I don't know why that was.
Hmm. Well, what's your overall score for the quality?
I gave the quality of the movie a 4.
And I gave it a 3. All right, now we'll talk about the performances. The non-Marx Brothers. What was your overall thoughts of some of these actors?
Not all A lot of them stood out. I did notice Ann Miller in there. She's a very well-known actress of the era. This was probably slightly before she did some of her more well-known work because she's an extremely good dancer and she sings also, which she didn't do either in this movie. She just was okay. And Lucille Ball was just okay as well. She wasn't terrible, but I guess she hadn't really found her niche in doing comedy because she was kind of the straight man in this
Hmm.
in
It's
this
kind of weird to
movie.
see her as a straight
Yeah,
character.
and she's not a bad actress. She was
Hmm.
fine. It's just there wasn't anything that special about her character, but I really liked the main guy, Leo. he was kind of a straight man, but he was funny, like, without trying to be, because
Hmm.
he was supposed to be kind of a dumb country boy. But some of his lines were like some of the best lines in the movie. I
Hmm.
feel like he made the movie good. Like he was the only good thing in this movie. Like it could have been worse, but his character was just kind of unique, and he sort of added to the humor without being like overtly humorous, if that makes sense.
Hmm. What about jumping butterballs? That's kind of a cheesy
Uh,
line, but
it's funny because that was the only thing. This was one of the movies I didn't remember having seen before.
mhm.
I didn't remember the Marx Brothers or the plot or anything,
Yeah, I
but I
didn't either.
remembered that line, and that was it. I don't remember anything else. So I know I've seen it before,
Yeah,
but for whatever reason, and it makes sense because it's not that memorable. I didn't remember literally nothing else in the
yeah.
movie.
I just think it's that line makes me cringe, and they do it several times. Like it's supposed to be funny, but it doesn't really make me laugh.
Yeah, it's kind of
Kind of cheesy.
a weird thing.
Um, I'm trying to remember, like the villain characters. I weren't as good as the last few villain characters in terms of acting. But my favorite character was a smaller role, the debt collector.
Hmm.
He was kind of crazy. I can't remember exactly what he
Yeah.
said, but he was very funny, I thought. But yeah, it's kind of weird to see Lucille Ball as a straight character, and I was not a fan of Ann Miller in this movie. I haven't seen her in other movies, but I just didn't like her character.
You've seen her and you can't
Not.
take it with you.
Oh, okay.
You just
Yes.
don't remember.
I think I liked her in that because I liked everybody in that.
Hmm.
But I just didn't wasn't a big fan of her in this one. But my favorite is the debt collector. So what? Oh, Marx Brothers. What is your thought of the Marx Brothers overall?
So that this, as I've already said, is not the best of. It's not going to be my favorite. I
Hmm.
listed Chico as my favorite Marx brother in this, mainly because he's the only Marx brother that didn't lower in quality of his performance. He kind of stayed the same,
Hmm.
which he tends to be my least favorite in most of the Marx Brothers movies.
Hmm.
I think he's kind of the underdog a little bit, and so
Hmm.
I try to give him more credit when I can. But he was the only one that kind of was this just as good as he is in the other movies, and I felt like
Hmm.
the other Marx Brothers kind of decreased in their quality, and so that's just who I chose for this one.
Hmm. Yeah, I think my favorite I put is Harpo because I thought he had some really funny moments. I thought Groucho was a huge step down in this. I mean, he would say lines the same way, but they weren't funny. And it wasn't his fault. It was probably the writing, but there was just a few things Harpo did that really made me laugh. Actually, I'll say that Groucho, the one really funny thing was when he dances at the beginning, which is just kind of random,
Oh yeah.
but that was pretty funny. And I wrote that down as one of my favorite moments. So, what's your overall score for the performance?
I gave the performance a 3.
And I gave it a 5. All right, the comedy in the movie. What are your thoughts of that? And do you have any favorite scenes that made you laugh?
There was a scene where Leo says a line that says I killed myself once, and I don't really remember the context. I That's just all I wrote down. I think it was just a funny line about his writing a play or something, I don't know. There was definitely plenty of comedy in this, the laughing moments. It's not completely without comedy. I think my favorite comedy scene is where Leo like fakes taking the poison, and that whole scene where he's in bed and all of that. Again, there's nothing that really stands out. There was just a few kind of laugh out loud moments.
Hmm. I think that there was a lot of little one-liners in there, or things that just popped out as funny, but there was no funny scenes really. The Groucho dance, which I mentioned, the debt collector, the dinner scene. I'm trying to remember. All I put was dinner. I don't remember why. The Harpo doll.
Oh, they're eating. They haven't eaten in a while, and they're eating it off the tray.
Right. But it was kind of
And
oh yeah, I
it
remember
was
now.
just kind of funny
They were
how
just
they did
eating
it.
really fast, but
Yeah.
it wasn't as funny as say in The Night at the Opera where they were eating. The Harpo when he's sick and says ah kind of made me chuckle.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
the Harpo candle hat.
Mhm.
And then there's somebody says a line, "I once killed myself," and Groucho gives this funny
That's
look.
what I. Yeah, that's the thing I just said, but I couldn't
Yeah.
remember the context.
Harpo crying, which he did once in Horse Feathers,
Mhm.
and then of course the funeral, which I have as the funniest scene, the funeral song,
Yes,
when they sing
Swing Low,
"Swing
Sweet
Low,"
Chariot. Yeah, that was
and
pretty good.
so
And
there
it
was just
wasn't it that it sounded like Chico was singing the melody, which normally you don't hear his voice stand out. So that was kind of interesting for
mhm,
this movie because you often will hear Groucho singing and then Zeppo when he's in the movie, but to actually hear Chico singing or that he's even singing at all is kind of interesting.
mhm. Yeah. To hear Chico singing,
Yeah, remember he sang in this, and it
right?
even
Well, he
sounded like he might
sings
have sung the
in previous
melody.
movies
Well, maybe when
as a
there's
solo.
several of them, he has.
Yeah. Remember, everyone says "I love you." He's playing on the piano and singing,
Oh yeah.
and trying to think of
It's just more rare to
yeah,
hear him singing. He's not like a great singer. Of course,
yeah.
none of them are that
Of
great,
course, it's
but
hard to sing with an accent while doing an accent, but yeah, you're right. He doesn't sing much.
mhm.
So, what's your overall score for Oh, and I'll just say that there was just so many little quick, just a few quick 1 second jokes that made me chuckle, but there was no scenes that like carried, with the exception
Mhm.
of that song. But I think 99% of the jokes failed.
Mhm.
So, what's your score for the comedy?
I gave the comedy a 2.
And I gave it a 1. All right, so what's your final score for room service?
My overall score for room service is 2.8.
And I gave it a 3.2.
Davis, we have a backup. Wagner is putting that check through his bank, isn't he?
Yeah?
Well, for 5 days, we have $15,000 worth of credit.
Gordon, you're not...
Why not? We're all rehearsed. We can open in 5 days.
Sure. All we need is scenery and costumes.
And we can charge that to the hotel.
But it's illegal. It's...
Relax, Davis. Wagner is backing the play. Jumping Butterballs!